Hey fellow cartoonists, welcome to another cartooning courses. And today I thought I'd do something really cool, and it's going to be broken up into two parts. Just because the second part is going to be a little bit more detailed, intricate, a little bit more challenging, and this first part is not. So, in fear of getting too lengthy with the video, I thought, I'll break it up in two. So this is a cool little tutorial just on depth in your drawings and your images and your cartoons. I keep everything I'm going to share with you in perspective when I am drawing and trying to figure out like the best way to create an image on a panel or square, or even, like with my illustrations, anything I'm doing. So I just want to share some tips with you on like what I do basically to give my images and comics some depth. And what I am using today is I am in the software called Procreate on my iPad Pro. So if you don't have an iPad Pro and you're using pen and paper or chalk and a chalkboard, I don't know, anything that you, whatever floats your boat, hey, you know what? It's really no biggie, especially for this first part. Because everything I'm going to share with you is relevant no matter what you're using. But I'm going to chart. Is that a word? I haven't had enough coffee yet. I'm going to start by kind of getting through this and rolling right along. And feel free, it might help to pause the video as we go if I'm moving too quick. But again, I didn't want to, all these video courses I try not to make too lengthy, so I do move along kind of quickly, but I think you'll be good. I think you'll be able to follow along all right. So here we are again in the software Procreate. As you can see, I have a blank canvas, and we are talking about depth today. How do we create depth in our drawings? I'm going to start by sketching out an image. I think the best image to do this with is just like a nature like landscape type scene. So I'm going to sketch a couple trees. Feel free to not sketch trees if you don't want, but I think trees and what I'm doing, it'll demonstrate really nicely what I had in mind with showing you depth and like what I'm talking about exactly. You can use this with anything though, a city. I mean, you can draw a building if you want, or a house, or whatever you feel like doing, but I'm going to do some trees. As you can see, and I should have pointed this out. I'm starting off with, in my brush library, I'm sketching with a technical pencil. I usually leave it at about 25% on the width, the brush size. And then for opacity, I usually put it about 50% or so. That gives it just more of a natural look. I like the look of it because every time I do this, it's like I feel like I'm using a real pencil, which, I grew up traditionally using a real pencil, and I still do from time to time, but I just think it helps with the overall, for me at least, putting it together. I still like to sketch, I guess you call it old school, so that's what I'm doing. So anyway, I'm just gonna quickly sketch out some trees here, and I think I'm gonna have a little path coming through here too, something like that. And then in the background here, I'm going to have a couple more trees. Just a few. And then I'm going to have a little hill here. And way in the back, a few more. And this is a very loose sketch. Nothing fancy here. Okay, cool. Now that we have that, I am going to, this is layer 1, hit my adjustments, the little magic wand up there, hit opacity, and put it down to about 40% would be good. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go into my brush library and go to my inking, and I'm using a technical pen for this. Make sure that the opacity on the pen is 100%. I'm using totally black ink, and I'm going to put this at about 25%. Now, this part of the video, this very first part is, some may say it's obvious, but it's not. Whoops, I tell you what, I just dropped my microphone, but oh well. I don't use it for the iPad anyways because I can't connect my microphone up to it. So I'm just dropping things and all kinds of goodies here today. Anyway, moving on. Um, it may seem obvious to some, but to others, this may have never. Maybe it never hit you. Like this is a good way to approach depth and perception in an image. Things that are closest to the eye in an image, in a cartoon, I try to make with a thicker line. So the cool thing about using Procreate and this pen is it is sensitive to that. And you can change this sensitivity in Procreate. You can play around with this however you'd like. But I have it set up so that when I press down harder, the line is thicker. And if I press down lighter, it's not as thick. So like these trees right in front, I'm going to give a relatively thick outline to with ink. And that little tapping sound that you hear is me tapping on the iPad. In case you didn't know, that's the sound it makes. But anyway, as you can see, I'm making these lines kind of thick and they still have some variance to them. A little bit, but not a ton. I just want to make some thicker lines up here. And then I'm making the tree line, the leaves on it, thick as well, but they're not going to be quite as thick and have a few more looser lines on them. But in general, just keep that in mind. Things that are closest to the eye, give it a thicker line. And you'll see as this all comes together, like it's really going to come together. These leaves on the tree, they are not going to, these are just like some indications that there's going to be leaves there, and I'm not making these as thick as you can see. But again, the main thing is that general outline. I have some grass in front of it, and I'm going to put some grass there. And I'm going to kind of, again, fly through this. I'm not going to make it extremely detailed. I am going to add some bark, though. And if you want some cool bark effects, not dog bark, like woof, woof. No, not those. Bark on a tree. There's a few ways of doing it. I like this kind of approach of just taking lines and adding little variations to them. And you can kind of the shape of the branch, you can kind of just contour the lines with them a little bit, and it really helps. Anyway, I'm going to go with that for bark. And again, I could go through this and really detail it up, but I'm not going to do that today. Go through and add some more grass. And then we have our walking path here. Snakes around, some more grass. And again, we have this tree that's kind of close, so I'm going to give it kind of a thick outline. Like that. Add some more bark to it, just like the other tree. You can also do this, like kind of rope it around the branches. And that's kind of cool too. All right. That, again, we have our leaves. And you, as the cartoonist artist, you can switch this up however you want. Just again, if you're doing buildings, if you're doing the trees like I'm doing, whatever is closest to the eye, I'm making a little bit thicker. So, okay. Cool. Give it a little shadow there. Now these leaves toward the back, I'm going to, as you can see, I'm not pressing down quite as hard. I'm going to give it an outline, just like I did with these earlier trees, but I'm just not going to press down as hard. So the lines are definitely not as thick, and already you can see it coming together. Like we have some depth to this drawing. It's a little things, and this is why this is part 1 too, because we're gonna in the next part I'm gonna be adding a lot of color and other details to it, and really show you how to make it pop. You know, like when you look at it, it just pops like popcorn or something. But yeah, the main point though is keep that in mind. You can make these things that are further back, the line's not quite as thick as the things that are in front. And there you have it. And even in this hill we have back here, the grassy knoll or whatever you want to call it, that line is not as thick. And then these trees way in the back, I'm going to give just a small outline to. And the thing about the trees in the back, I'm going to be taking away the ink from these soon. I just want to give them an outline for now and make these lines really skinny. But these lines in the far back on these trees, you'll find out when we finish this completely, won't matter that much. But let's say I was doing a black and white drawing. This is pretty much how I'd want to have it. I'm going to go to my layer 1, take off the pencil, and bam! We have already, as you can see, some depth to this drawing and illustration. And you know, I'm noticing a couple of mistakes here. I'm going to erase that. There's even little things like, it's not a mistake, but I noticed like even with this trail here, I can actually probably lower that line a little bit, make it just a little bit more skinny as it goes back. And then you can see it's just a little bit more thicker up front, and I can even add to that a little bit more. And there you go. But at any rate, this gives you kind of a quick perspective of line weight and depth. Well, it is line weight, and it makes any image have depth to it when you have the thicker lines up front and the less thick lines in back. So, you know, keep that in mind. I don't know what tools you're using. You could be using, the same size. You could be using a marker that doesn't have this option to it. And that's fine too. This is my own personal work. And this is what I this is what I do. I mean, this is what I do to create depth to my drawings, to my illustrations. And so yeah, this is just kind of the starting off the bat, like if you can get this little part down and keep that in mind about, the line weight, great, we're on the right path. Now, when we dive into this next time, what I'm going to do is have colors added to it, some awesome colors, and show you how to use the colors magically. And this is definitely going to pertain more toward digital art and using, if you're not using Procreate, you can still use it like on Photoshop or anything like that too, but it's going to be definitely more digital art geared, but you can also apply some of these color techniques on the next video to painting, or if you're using other tools. But I will be using Procreate again, and I will be finishing off this particular drawing. So join me for that. I hope you got a nice little, taste of what's to come. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.